Hi, it's time for another verb of the day. Today's verb is scare. Let's take a moment and review some of the definitions or the ways that we use this verb. The first way the verb scare gets used can mean to cause great fear or nervousness in someone or something. The first definition is a synonym to a verb we discussed about a month ago. It's frighten. And I chose this verb today because it's Halloween in the United States, and part of the traditions of this holiday involve trying to cause fear in others. Now, related to this is the second definition of our verb. It is to become scared. So either causing it or having that particular feeling of great fear or nervousness. All of that is connected. For now, you should know that scare is a regular verb. If you want to make the progressive form of this verb, drop the E on the end before you add ing. That forms scaring. The past tense and the participle forms of this verb can be made by just adding D since this verb already ends in an E. Now our base verb, scare, ends in an R sound, and R sounds are always voiced sounds in English. This means our ED ending is just going to make a D sound, and I'm not going to add an extra syllable when I say it. So the past tense and the participle forms of our verb should sound like this: scared, scared. Okay. Now, there are actually a large number of phrasal verbs connected to this particular verb. So today we're going to review them and their meanings. We'll look at some example sentences and try and review some verb tenses as we go along. The first phrasal verb we'll discuss is to scare away. This generally means we're frightening someone so much, right? They're going to leave or go away. An example of this: the homeowner scared away the would-be robbers with a paintball gun. Now, this was a recent headline in some newspapers here in the United States, but I thought it illustrated this phrasal verb quite well. The homeowner frightened away, got these people who were trying to rob him to leave by using a paintball gun. Another phrasal verb, oh, and I should say scared away there, is simple past tense. Okay. Now let's move to scare into. When we use this phrasal verb, we're talking about causing someone to do something because of their own fear. An example of this: the salesperson scared us into buying more life insurance. Right? So, again, another simple past tense sentence here. We can see that ed ending. And this person may have said different things that started to cause that worrying feeling, that nervous feeling, and it prompted people to act in a particular way. Now, another phrasal verb you might encounter is to scare off. Here, the meaning is very similar to scare away, so we're frightening someone so much that they leave or go away. An example of this: how should we scare off a bear? Right? What do we do to frighten it so it goes away? This sentence is using the modal should, right? We're asking for advice in that sentence. Another phrasal verb you might encounter is to scare out. Again, our meaning here is we're causing someone or some animal, in some cases, to leave or run away by frightening them. An example of this: how did you scare the squirrel out? This is a WH question in the simple past tense, something I like to call more information because we just can't say yes or no to it. In this particular question, we're asking for details about the manner or the way something was done. So maybe this animal got into someone's car or house, right? And we want to know, how did you get that animal to leave? Now let's continue on with some other phrasal verbs. The next one we're going to discuss is to scare out of. This one can have a number of different meanings. We're going to talk about 4 ways to use it. The first way you'll hear scare out of used is very similar to the last one we just discussed. So, causing someone or some animal to leave a place by frightening either the person or the animal. Here's an example of that. The dog scared the squirrel out of the tree. That's another simple past tense example. What is a little different in this sentence, and you might be wondering why the out of? Well, after of is going to be sort of the place that they were forced from, what where they left, if you will. So in the first one, you might remember my earlier example. I'll go back, right? How did you square the squirrel out, right? Out of what, right? We don't know where that animal was. But here in scare out of the tree, now we know, okay, the squirrel was in the tree and the dog caused uh, a feeling of anxiety and nervousness and ran away. A second way you might hear scare out of used means to use fear or intimidation to cause or influence someone to avoid doing something or to stop doing something. An example of this: seeing a man with a tracheotomy scared me out of smoking. And this is very true. I feel like I may have used this example before, but when I was very little, there was an older man at the church I attended who had this opening and would use a special device to be able to talk. Made his voice sound very different and unusual. And I immediately wanted to know why does this man have this? And my parents said, well, he smoked a long time and he dealt with cancer, and this is how he was continuing to live. It's like, oh, that's it. I'm never smoking, right? So um, that um, seeing that man struggle kind of with something I take for granted, right? The ability to talk, um, intimidated me and it influenced me to avoid that particular activity. Now, a third way you can use scare out of can mean to cause someone to share something, right? So here maybe they're divulging a secret. And again, it's usually because they're being threatened. So, an example of this: did the police scare a confession out of her? So here, were they saying threatening things that made her feel like, okay, I just have to say, I did it? That's a yes or no question in the simple past tense. A fourth way to use scare out of means to give someone a very serious shock or fright. So, what you're going to notice here is there's going to be something that comes between scare and our particles out of. So, my example sentence here says, you will scare the daylights out of her if you sneak up on her. Some people will say, scare the wits out of me or scare the life out of me. Sometimes they'll use some curse words with that. So, all of those things have that same meaning about giving someone serious shock or fright. Now, the last phrasal verb we'll discuss today is to scare up. This meaning is very different. It is to collect, assemble, or produce someone or something with a great deal of effort. An example of this: have we scared up enough volunteers yet? This is a present perfect sentence. And we're kind of wanting to know, have we put together, have we assembled enough volunteers for this particular event? Maybe we've all been posting on social media, contacting our friends, our family, right? Trying to assemble this group. One last note before we move on. I think I forgot to mention the you will scare the daylights out of her. That's simple future. Okay, now let's move on and talk about some words that are related to our verb scare. And the first word we're going to discuss is just the noun form of this word. The noun scare can be used to describe a sudden attack of fright. An example of this: I got quite the scare when I walked in the house, right? Maybe things were turned over, something looked not normal or out of the ordinary. A second way to use the noun scare is to talk about a situation characterized by sudden alarm or anxiety about something. So you might hear this used. People talk about food scares, kind of like a lot of people are worried we don't have enough food, and or some other kind of needed um, thing. So my example sentence here says, recent energy scares have caused countless problems in the country. So here we're describing a situation where people are very alarmed, they're anxious that there's not enough electricity or other sources of energy to uh, allow machines to work, allow us to plug in and charge things, whatever the case may be. Another related word you might hear is the adjective scary. So, generally, when we use this, we're describing something that causes fear. So, an example of this: do you like scary movies? Okay. But a second way you might hear this adjective used means that something is uncannily striking or surprising. An example of this: there are some scary similarities between these two, right? So here it doesn't have to mean like, they're scary similarities, but really surprising. Another word you might see is the adjective scared. This describes someone having the feeling. They are frightened or they are fearful. Now, this is something I've heard many students kind of struggle with over my years of teaching English. So, I've had students tell me some story about something serious that was happening, and they would say things like, "Oh, I'm so scary," right? Or I was so scary, right? They weren't causing fear, they were having the fear. So, I was so scared is a better way of saying that. An example of this: I wasn't scared being home alone during the storm. So here someone is saying, I wasn't frightened. I wasn't full of fear. Now, another word you might see is the noun scarecrow. This is an object. It's made to look like a human figure. It was first used or created to try and scare birds away from fields where crops were growing. And so I've got a picture in the lower right hand corner of my screen, what they look like more likely in 2024. And I'll note in my example sentence here, scarecrows are a common fall decoration in the United States. And this is true. Some people will dress up uh, like this figure creature as part of Halloween. You will see different things even up until the United States Thanksgiving holiday as well. Last word for us today, and this noun is scaredy cat. It is used to describe a timid person, right? So we're generally not saying this in a very kind way either. So if a friend told you, don't be a scaredy cat, come to the haunted house with us, right? They don't want you to be a timid or fearful person. They want you to kind of embrace the excitement that many people feel in kind of frightening environments. Well, I want to thank everybody for watching. If you are watching on Halloween, happy Halloween. I really appreciate you watching, and I hope you have a great day.